Works. Here we go, everybody. Got a little bit of my talking there, but welcome to our regular Monday stream.
Hello.
I'm Lo. We're here. We're doing some more therapeutic state stuff.
Yes.
Really.
I don't know. I suppose we should probably do the YouTubey stuff
Oh
first
yeah,
before we
yeah, yeah.
explain what we're up to.
Yes. I don't know. I'm just letting people filter in, so I thought I'd do the normal chat. Those of you who follow our comms extremely closely might have seen some of our cooking stuff go up. So
Yes.
we could talk about the fact that we've been doing basically steak slices for those who know what a steak slice is. The size of a baking tray.
Our pies bring all the workmen to the yard, and
Yeah.
damn right, they're better than yours. I would
Yes.
teach you, but I have to charge. Or
Yes.
something of that ilk.
Exactly. Exactly that. But we have been getting the pies out a little bit.
Pies out.
Pies out. But I'd recommend. It's a perfect segue because I'd recommend following us on Twitter if you can find us. Although we're not on there we're only on there
I am
periodically.
not on Twitter.
No, so the best place.
There is an evil imposter of me on there.
Yes, neither am I. I'm going to say neither of us are actually on Twitter. I have an account run by an unpaid intern, and the best place to find it really is to join the Telegram. All that stuff's in the description. We are still, through some miracle of science, still monetized, so you can become a member, or you can donate via Streamlabs, or you can donate via Super Chats. There's actually a donation I missed last week, but that's just because they donated right at the end, and I just kind of missed them. But I said I would answer it this week. S. Smith is completely unrelated to what we've not completely. It's useful anyway. Ever heard of Science: The Endless Frontier by Vannevar Bush? An interesting letter to FDR on how to have the state fund such take over science for its own goals. Not actually a bad. I've not read that, but I might look it up, and it's not actually a bad.
That'll go on the mental directory.
Not actually a bad subject leading. I see you in the chat there, Anne Smith, and I did remember to read your chat. They did contact me after, which is fine. Like I said, we do endeavor to both read our normal chat and to answer all our chats.
And also, if you're like really, really cool, you won't follow us on Twitter, but instead follow us on Telegram.
Yes, or you can join the Substack. There'll be something out again this week, I believe. I've got a piece on Wednesday I'm looking to put out.
Yeah, I might have something else out, but that'll just be we're sort of experimenting at the moment and trying to do
shorter form stuff.
Yeah,
because I've learned that on Substack, like, people just do not read long things. I'm sorry, they don't.
Yeah, no.
So we're experimenting with some shorter form, more regular content on the Substack. So do look out for that, because we tend to post like long things on Twitter or on Telegram mostly, that could, with a little bit of work, be turned into, say, like a 500-word little piece. I think those are a lot more digestible for people, especially in their inboxes. So that's what we're looking to do, really. This really forms out of, we had to separate all the stuff we had last week to focus down the stream more.
Yeah.
On the specific racism as a pandemic stuff, because there's so much of it and it became so widespread. But there's a lot more other stuff here. I entitled this one "Dissidence of Disease," but it's also really about the pathologizing of critical thought.
Yes, or of a certain subset of thought.
Yeah. It's
maybe also worth mentioning. Thank you to the usual people who show up to the streams and interact with them, so that we get better served in the algorithms and whatnot. So
yes, please
leave your plus ones and your ritualistic symbology in the comments. For the algorithm gods.
Plus press the symbolic buttons.
Yes.
For all their worth. And it will bring you great joy. It won't, but it will bring you more right content.
No, it will. I think you mean.
All hail the algorithms.
But yeah, I think to some extent we could say that last week was us describing the framework.
Yes.
And this week is maybe attempting to at least cover the application, as it were.
This is a lot more of the application of the therapeutic
and some of the
stuff.
Science or some of the quote-unquote science that justifies it.
Yes. I'm just making sure. I don't think I have this image whisper. We do have some very good and tasty bits out of After Liberalism.
Again.
Again. think near the end. But it's perfect. We're able to use the phrase "argumenta ad Hitlerum" and use it in context. So yeah, it's very. Will be making fun of the
Anyway,
empiricoids.
let's get moving.
All right, let's let's actually get into it then, shall we? I had there's quite a few things here actually. So right, let us switch here. Oh, to introduce it, we will also be using occasionally our Glow Watch banner. I have not used this yet because I keep forgetting it's there, but I did make it.
Shift out of park.
Yeah, we've also got the little for when there's a lot of glow. We've got the constant glow icon there. Mr. Diversity Higher Glow there.
Yeah.
But we do have stuff.
Well, it's good that they make them glow in the dark because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see them when you left your TV.
Yes, a lot of this, a lot of this stuff does also just glow quite heavily. There's a lot of people here who have grants and funding from very inside the machine, inside the weapon stuff. So it's a lot of this stuff does glow at least gently. It glows. But we do have some more overlay stuff and some more fun stuff to use with that, along with our usual bag of tricks. We've not been wheeling out Alex Jones as much lately. That's just because they kind of makes me sad.
Yeah.
Since he got effectively financially moved out of existence and then embarrassed on air by someone with an ulterior motive and some handlers, let's say. But
yes.
We don't talk about those events on this. What we're talking about as kind of a primary incident is a supposed research article and study which is very widely cited.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say not to like cut ourselves off from one of the things you were gonna put in later, but maybe to give other people like a context for, you know, this isn't just some random peer-reviewed paper you've picked out of a pile. This has been used in, I mean, you pulled the list up a second ago. We were looking at stuff. How many outlets have used
Vox,
this?
BBC, Mail Online, Medical Press, Times of Malta.
I mean, if we
lots
go right
of
to
weird
the top
ones.
here, like, what's the most recent one?
Yahoo News.
This was used. This was used in one last week.
This was used in one 3 days ago.
Yeah. Medium, Psychology Today.
Yeah.
Equities, some other thing, and you scroll all the way down. And that's papers from 2016. How many? Does it give us a thing on the left here, possibly, about how many total sites it's had and mentioned by
tweeters,
85
news outlets, 34 blogs, 16 Wikipedia pages.
Yeah.
This is how
one peer review site.
Yeah. One. It's only cited in one study. This is
24 whole Redditors.
Yeah, this is how you differentiate pop science from what is. Even then, it's hard to. But really,
throughout there seems to be that this paper has been used as an empirical justification for medical and cancer-based conspiracies by the look of it.
Yes, it has.
It's
been used to debunk the cancer industrial complex, which very clearly does exist. But it's called On the Viability of Conspiratorial Beliefs. And it's by someone called David Robert Grimes. And I'll actually introduce him at this point. This is our protagonist. Dr. David Robert Grimes. He's a checkmark with about 28,000 followers. And he's supposedly a cancer researcher.
No, he's followed by Robert Murphy. Come on, Bob.
I think he's trying to keep track of him. That might be a hate follow.
Right. Oh, no. Right. It's fair enough.
Evergreen reminder, rejecting scientific consensus on vaccines, climate change, or COVID-19 doesn't make you a critical thinker. It makes you a tired contrarian. If you're positioned at odds with the overwhelming scientific evidence, you might have to ask yourself why.
Sorry, but can we, the next line here? Jesus on a Batmobile. It's just got so Reddit.
Yeah, he is Dr. David Robert Grimes. And most of this is Reddit incarnate.
He's also a Twitter doctor.
Yeah, he's a Twitter doctor.
Cancer researcher, physicist, scoundrel.
He's basically somebody who goes around and makes all the regime's points for them in a way that they can circularly cite. There's actually a great just takedown of him by another
these
publication.
These reply tweets down here, there's something just hilarious about these. There's a hell of a lot of folk who seem to think scientific consensus is synonymous with an opinion poll.
Well, it is.
That is not remotely how evidence synthesis works, and if you're bleating that you might want to check a little before you expose your ignorance, can no longer be arsed with the replies from people who steadfastly refuse to understand anything about how science actually works. Things are always debated in science. That doesn't mean any dumb idea you have is actually scientifically worthwhile. What? Consensus doesn't actually mean majority opinion, but minority opinion on something normally means it's wrong.
It's very this is your brain on Empiricoid.
I heckin' love science.
Yeah, he is Mr. I heckin' love science. I heckin' love science and Obama.
Yes.
That's what all this is, but it's oh god. On the viability of conspiratorial beliefs, again from January 2016, and really, I'll tell you what. I'll read the abstracts, not in its entirety, but just give you a good idea of what this study is supposed to be. Because basically, what it is I'm debunking that conspiracies can exist with science because I watch Rick and Morty.
Well, don't you understand? People can be mathematically modeled perfectly, of course.
Conspiratorial ideation is the tendency of individuals to believe that events and power relations are secretly manipulated by certain clandestine groups and organizations. I believe that's sanity. If you don't believe that power is exercised in some way behind closed doors, I would argue that you are.
Yeah, but he's talking about medicine. That's different.
Yeah. Many of these ostensively explanatory conjectures are non-falsifiable, lacking in evidence, or demonstrably false. Yet public acceptance remains high. Efforts to convince the general public on the validity of medical and scientific findings can be hampered by such narratives, which can create the impression of doubt or disagreement in areas where the science is settled, guys.
Yes.
Yeah. Conversely, historical examples of exposed conspiracies do exist, and it may be difficult for people to differentiate between reasonable and dubious assertions. In this work, we establish a simple mathematical model for conspiracies involving multiple actors with time, which yields failure probability for any given conspiracy. It's to go through it, the whole thing is arbitrary bunk, because what he's doing is he's pulling out a number of conspirators out of his arse.
Well, there is also the premise here that known conspiracies are known in their whole.
Yes.
As opposed to being some kind of limited hangout where you actually only understand 3/4 of the story and are missing vital parts to make it all make sense.
The premise falls down on its face because what this proposes is that we know everything.
Yeah.
We have all knowledge, and the idea that conspiracies have been exposed means that all conspiracies must be exposed.
Or must inevitably.
Yeah. It's simple, basic survivor bias is what it is. It's extremely easy to look at it on the face of it and just go, this is an extremely poor study that will not yield useful results. But that's not the point of this. We'll go over in a little bit about how basically the mathematical modeling within its own framework, even if you could measure these things, is completely false.
As someone has very kindly pointed out for us in a thread that is almost
comical.
It's cathartic.
Yeah,
I think would be the phrase.
It's comical because they basically admit that the entire mathematical backing of this is flawed, but it's about creating a discussion, is where it gets to. But I'll get figure one up here just to give you an idea here. They basically start out with a probability L for conspiracy of 5,000 initial conspirators with different population assumptions. So basically, the idea here... Oh, that's such a terrible way of showing it. The idea here is that as time goes on, if you have a constant conspiracy, the failure rate is extremely high. Probability of failure, time in years. And the idea is that conspiracies can't really exist because I have failure probability stuff. It irks me because yes, you can measure like failure probability, but how are you doing that? Like how are you measuring all the world's conspiracies without being like omniscient? It doesn't make any sense, and it is peak I draw line.
I think on the face of it, if you fall for all the basic tenets of the liberal view of man,
Yeah.
that man is inherently good, that everything is done by the book and by procedure, and no one would ever wing anything or do any dodgy work or cut corners,
Yeah.
then maybe I could at least understand the basic logic of why you might believe this to be true. I think if you've ever actually experienced humans in the real world, you would understand that creating conspiracies and lying to people is a basic defense and survival mechanism.
Yeah. It's basically saying that you can conspiratorially you can prove that the elite class doesn't exist. Basically, I think that's the wider point of
Uh,
this.
I'm not so sure if he's going whole hog to suggesting that there is no such thing as a ruling elite, but the idea that an elite could
Well,
somewhat rule in secret.
Yeah, believe the events and power relations are secretly manipulated by certain clandestine groups or organizations.
Listen, secretly manipulated.
Yeah, yeah,
If it was outwardly manipulated by clandestine groups, then in his eyes it wouldn't be a conspiracy theory.
yeah. So as long as the tyranny is done in the open, it's all fine.
Yeah.
It just goes on to talk about things like a moon landing conspiracy, climate change conspiracy. But like I said, it kind of falls over on its own merits.
I don't know. I kind of want to read some of at least of his framing here of these different conspiracies, just to see what he's taken out of them. Successful 1969 Apollo 11 mission. Well, that's a bit presumptive, isn't it? Of course, it's a conspiracy theory if you believe the mission was successful. A seminal achievement in human history, yet even since that historic day, there has been a persistent fringe belief group that strongly believe the moon landings were fake, mocked up by propaganda purposes. 2013 was estimated that 7% of Americans subscribe to this view. Those advocating this conspiracy claim there are inconsistencies in pictures taken. It's not like he's really gone for any concrete ones here either, has he?
No,
his moon landing stuff's cookery. Climate change conspiracies, you can always argue your way out because you turn it around and people say, well, what, are you trying to suggest that nature moving on its own is a conspiracy? Ooh.
Yeah, it really is very extremely broad here.
I'd like to see him redo the vaccine one nowadays, though, or specifically with COVID vaxes.
Let's have a look down here. I wanted to go down to really the...
Somebody in the chat, no Von Braun, no moon landing. Remember we did a massive special at one point about where's Von Braun today? And it was just pictures of him with like different world leaders and all sorts of newspapers. Good times that.
Basically what he's trying to say is that conspiracies are, especially consistent conspiracies, are impossible given enough time, because I've made up a mathematical model that shows what I want to show. But the funny part is that there's a comment here from 2016 itself, and from, I think this is one of his physics peers actually, somebody called Adam Jacobs, who is...
Oh no, it's just a person that brought the paper to the guy's
attention.
Okay. It's whoever NMR Quip is. I don't know if you...
No, I think there's a further article here which goes through some of this, which talks about the fact that even when it first came out, these flaws were coming up. Basically, what it is a lot of the stuff that kind of exponential decay is supposed to reach zero or near zero, or as near as zero as possible. Tends towards zero.
And at least from what is shown in the functions we are given, it is not clear where it actually reaches zero.
Yeah, there's
no... no, it's not necessarily just those ones. It's also the fact that the blue one at the top should also, in theory, reach 100.
Yeah, it should do.
So neither of these functions appear to have...
They don't have a terminus.
Or at least not that we know of, and
No.
it should really be given. I think if you were to take the actual formula and stick numbers in it and work it backwards, it would tell you where any sort of horizontal asymptotes are, which is more work than we would be willing to put into this at the moment.
yeah, but it really is that none of these reach where they should do. They should hit the middle curve there, the orange curve should hit zero, it never does. And that's what's kind of being pointed out in a lot of the comments. Again, a lot of the criticism of this initially was completely non-political and purely mathematical, because as a mathematical, you can do mathematical exercises how you want. That's how the empiricoid thing functions. And that if you make it look like you're doing process and you just do process, and nobody talks about the inputs or outputs.
Let's not even get into the whole problem that was discovered a number of years ago, that infinite sets that people have assumed have been infinite and allow you to do certain styles of statistical mathematics actually turn out not to be infinite or infinitely replaceable or changeable of the figures within the set itself. So much of the mathematics that backs what he's doing here actually hasn't really stuck anymore.
That's great. It says, I'm pleased to see the handling editor addressed our concerns, because they basically acknowledge that he's correct. However, your response, I feel that you've not fully appreciated the issue and how it relates that concludes. I therefore ask you to reconsider your response in light of the following comments.
Yeah, what you want here is the last couple of lines. Worse, and thus the entire content of the paper relating to mortality and decay models could be effectively removed. Now you suggest that this doesn't matter because the constant population model still stands. However, the constant population model is simply a standard Poisson distribution with the probability plugged into it. There is no original contribution left, which is basically I'm saying the fact that, oh yeah, you're showing basic Poisson distributions.
And, worse still, in this case, the probability is plugged in is taken from just 3 examples, giving 3 probabilities. 2 come out to around 0.005, loss of zeros, while the third is minus 0.0025. The third number is over 50 times larger than the other 2, orders of magnitude different. There's simply no way to a general value for p could be extrapolated from such a limited amount of data, or paucity of data. It's data poor, basically. So in summary, you agree that the only model that makes a substantive original contribution is completely flawed. The only reason you this didn't alter the conclusions is because the methodology was so flawed it failed to test the model adequately. Without the flawed models, what is simply left is as a standard probability curve and not original conclusion. The values plugged into that remaining model are, in any case, completely unsupportable. It's
as a response to that message at all.
Yeah. I don't believe
you cannot argue that the flawed equations of the core would be contribution of the paper. There's survival models with time varying probabilities. Dr. Grimes somehow missed Cox's paper, even though it has been cited over 40,000 times by others. Indeed, sections 1.2 and 1.3 has no reference at all to statistical journals or textbooks. There is a reference to a statistics textbook, but the reference is to justify a parameter rather than a method.
He's getting absolute...
No competing interest declared either. So not only is it bad maths, but as an academic paper goes, it's appalling.
There's no actual responses to this from the author.
Did I just say that one of the people worked on this is Marty Robbins?
Who?
Roll up a second.
This, yeah.
There we go. Significant comments by Martin Robbins.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the big iron on his hip guy.
No. But that's how it was received within its own community, within its own framework. Yeah. Not even by people who go, you can't empirically talk about the failure rates of conspiracies from examples of information you don't have, but within its own model, the arse falls out of it. But like we showed earlier, it has been cited by basically every single media. Russia Today, apparently.
Business Insider. Technology.org, Washington Post.
It's cited in
Loose Science.
Yes, it's cited in dozens of different...
El Confidential, BBC a number of times, Mail Online, Guardian, Radio New Zealand, Science
Math
News.
Studies shows conspiracies prone to unraveling. The worst one, though, and the one I want to move on to here, really, is the Ars Technica example, which is possibly the most Reddit...
Yeah, get your Reddit protection
get your
Reddit
protection.
Get your gloves, your apron. You don't want any splashback off this.
This is the most Reddit thing you will see today. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, I'll happily. An equation that debunks conspiracy theories. Okay, not really, but for real, don't believe silly conspiracy theories. By Scott K. Johnson. From... It's American date, so it's
from 2016.
1st of February 2016. Is this before or after that paper then?
It's
It's only 6 days after.
Yeah. Basically, it's got a massive amount of. It had a media blitz behind it,
Mm.
even though his own fellow like statisticians and math, there's a reason it only has one citation in a different paper, which is the sign of a
His
failed paper.
fellow empiricides.
Mm. Even his fellow empiricides bought him a new one.
I've posted a couple in the Discord as well for empiricide examples in case anyone doesn't know what those are.
Yeah, the greater empiricid brain. Oh shit! What I should probably do actually. Well, I forgot to do it earlier.
Let's pin the Streamlabs link.
Yeah. I'll pin the Streamlabs donation link if you guys want to ask any.
I guess I'm sure there's been loads of people waiting in chat begging to ask, where shall we send you money?
Yeah.
Please do send it there.
I usually do that as a matter of course. But no, it's an Ars Technica article. Again, this is peak pop science. You don't get more pop science than this. How about it?
For some, rejection of the human role in climate change reduces to a conspiracy. The world's climate scientists are part of a socialist cabal falsifying research to justify energy regulation. Someone who's never met a climate scientist or looked closely at published studies can simply hold on to this idea rather than deal with a mountain of scientific evidence. I love the switcheroo there.
Yeah.
It's not that I actually know that climate change is real and can demonstrate it myself through abstraction and thought. It's that I looked at some graphs and talked to the scientists. Man, it's so real. Of course, it's patently ridiculous. The conspiracy would include an incredible number of scientists around the world perfectly coordinating for decades with nary a leak to give the game away, and that's before getting into all the socialists who would have had to be involved. I don't know, you ever heard of Willie Soon? He basically is like a whistleblower for this actually being true.
Yes.
And what's his name? Is it something Goddard and all the guys over at NASA and yeah, that's basically what they did.
Yes, it is.
In a recent paper, Oxford physicist and cancer researcher David Robert Grimes decided to try and create a mathematical measure for just how stupidly implausible that idea is. A sort of conspiracy probability equation. Isn't that exactly the kind of thing the cabal would use to throw the sheeple off the scent? Grimes must be in on it.
But this is just like people can read these public comments that are here. Like we just went through where somebody actually two people completely just tore it a new one.
Well, there's also seems to be a number of people who are responding to him with examples of the fact that, like, oh yeah, look at these number of government programs that were actually kept. Like someone's talking about the Manhattan project. Thousands of people worked on that, and it wasn't really until nearly into the 60s that people really found out what was going on there.
We still don't really know fully.
No. Well, and that goes back to our earlier point, that the large premise this is built on is the fact that you ever get to the bottom of these conspiracies, which you never really tend to do.
Again, it's pure survivor bias. It's, well, we know about these conspiracies, therefore other large-scale conspiracies are impossible. I mean, think about how long PRISM would have gone on for. Or think about how long all the other programs underneath it go on for.
PRISM's still going on.
Yeah.
And most people don't know about it. I mean, 1913, they happened to set up a thing called the Federal Reserve, and most people still haven't worked out that was set up by conspiracy, farce, and not by like a government people voted for.
Jekyll Island.
The equation calculates the probability of a conspiracy busting leak at 1 minus e the power of e t or minus t phi, where phi includes the potentially changing number of conspirators over time, odds that one of these people leaks information in a given year. Well, that's not technically true, because some of the examples given in the paper are of singular events that don't have a perpetuating sort of number of conspirators and the number of people involved, and it actually bleeds off.
Well, it's also just the idea that you can, based on 3 single examples, you can break this down to a mathematical model that is in some way accurate. It is ridiculous on the face of it. But I just wanted to kind of go down. They basically give the baby version of this.
Obviously, these spitballed numbers are a bit of a lark to make a point, but Grimes hopes that some people will get that point. Even if you ignore the thin premises underlying these conspiracies, as well as the logistical challenge of fudging every measurement study ever, the odds of maintaining the illusion are not kind. But conspiracy theories survive partly because they are completely invulnerable to argument. After all, invulnerable to argument after all. So if you really think that we faked the moon landings, crunching a few numbers probably won't pin down mental gymnasts and get them to say uncle. The X-Files would have had a pretty short run if Mulder were easily that dissuaded. He knows we're out there. On a practical note for you henchman hires out there, Grimes' equation suggests that if you want your conspiracy to last at least 10 years, you should definitely limit yourself to no more than 1,257 conspirators.
Again, though, it's complete like Reddit nonsense. God, what are have the comments been removed? Yeah, Ars Technica. Right? Oh no, they didn't remove their comments. Oh God, they're all like the most Reddit things.
But Ben Franklin, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
Oh, I have a quote. God, that's just so terrible.
God, is finally a graph so simple even cavemen can understand.
Reddit alert, Reddit alert, Reddit alert. But again, there's as we talked about earlier, a lot of this as well was used to talk about the fact that there's a lot of framing here, like the Times of Malta one here, and there's a lot of how to survive fake news about cancer, and it's
they've let David Robert Grimes write this himself.
Yes,
so he's writing a Guardian article where he references his own study that's bunk.
Well, basically what he's doing is David Robert Grimes, as well as being a regime backstop empiricist, is also somebody who defends the cancer and pain medication.
Zoom in a bit.
Yeah.
Let's get the nonce check.
Nonce check. The decision.
Nonce.
Beep, 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 beep.
Oh yeah, the nonsometer's off the charts.
The nonsometer's gone. But yeah, he's basically here to play backstop for the cancer industry. And as we talked about with the replicatability crisis, there is a huge, staggering replicatability crisis in specifically end of life cancer drugs. Because the people who are on them are terminal. And their outcomes are indeterminate.
What are also desperate.
Yes.
And are frankly also maybe some of them due like a miracle.
Yes.
I mean, that's one large part of the cancer that's completely understood. Sometimes it just goes away.
Yes. We have a donation here from Coney Current Year. Thank you for the $3. He said, there's a subreddit I loathe called Our Non-Credible Defense that basically serves as a fanboy forum for NATO, Ukraine, the American military and industrial complex. I'd love to listen to a stream of you guys deconstructing modern military. I might do that with Trig at some point, but honestly...
is that the kind of thing where if you throw a couple of stones at these like radar-proof tanks and boats and planes and stuff, all of a sudden they're not radar-proof anymore?
You will be seeing an article from me about the American military industrial complex and partially about modern weaponry on Wednesday.
Maybe that's worth just throwing a quick Substack post together for then. So... Coney Current Year, keep your eyes peeled.
Well, we've already got that one. That's the.
Not that one. I'm saying the thing he's referencing.
Oh
there.
No, I could always do some follow-ups. But yes, there will be something about both the military-industrial complex and some of the shambolic nature of modern weaponry this week. So that will at least be partially answered, or at least maybe slightly tangential. But I just wanted to talk about the fact that this is really being used to defend what is the indefensible, which is the exploiting of end-of-life cancer patients with drugs that do not work. And that are coin flips in other people's... when they are checked, they are coin flips and they have no discernible impact above placebo. Yet these miracle drugs are pushed on people, are part of the scientific consensus. They're part of the settled science that these pharmaceutical companies are putting out all of this peer-reviewed research, and it's one of the best known instances of both the replicatability crisis and the pharmaceutical industry conspiring within itself to defraud people.
Well, look at this. I mean, where is the transparency here? Does he even mention in here that this is his own paper?
I believe he does.
He's there's a conspiracy theory for you. That 1 in 2 people get cancer. Half of us alive today will experience a direct brush with it. That's a conspiracy theory. Give me your evidence. Give me your source.
Well, the big thing here is that a lot of these cancer articles, especially in 2019, were talking about the conspiracy that weed cures cancer. It's like, no. THC and cannabinoids are a great treatment for cancer pain,
Yeah,
specifically bone
it's a
pain.
quality of life
Yes, it
thing.
is. And it is, again, specifically the opioid industry, aka the Oxycontin people. And I hate to get all full libertarian here, going out there and trying to be like, nope, nope, no THC for you.
Hmm.
No pain relief, no cancer pain relief. Because it is still the best form of cancer pain relief for a lot of, we all have different receptors, but for people who have the right receptors, it is much better than opioids. And
Yeah,
it gives you a far higher quality of life. And again, that is what this study is being used to backstop for. So this is, I know we get to the medical side of it directly again, but this is how the therapeutic state
I'm
functions.
sure he's got some other articles about how people with Parkinson's shouldn't smoke weed; it'll impair their driving.
It's all that kind of stuff, though. It's the conspiracy jacketing of normality, and that's how this works. Get someone to write a bunk study that says that conspiracies can't exist and small groups can't rule you in secret, and he goes out and essentially uses it to defend, the cancer medical
But
pharmaceutical industrial
there's also
complex.
the thing they're not, you know, considering, which is, well, fair enough. You've got some quote unquote conspiracy takes 2,000 people to make it work.
Yeah,
Now, if you know anything about how to do cloak and dagger style, like social engagement of any form, you will first and foremost explain to the people that aren't in an organizing role that what they're doing is a lot more simple than the job itself. So they won't actually know they're engaging in a wider conspiracy to say, I don't know, revolutionize a whole country.
yeah.
They just think their job is to make neoliberal drama programs for Middle Eastern countries for some market that they've been told exists that actually doesn't.
Yeah,
And what they're doing is they're working as part of the, the geopolitical whole process of turning over some country in a color revolution.
it doesn't factor in the idea that full information, the idea that a conspiracy is in fact a conspiracy, is generally only explicitly communicated between an extremely small
Uh,
vanguard of people.
the entire conspiracy itself must be all knowing
And
for
we
what they're
see
saying, suggesting to be true.
we see governments proudly disclosing kind of World War I, World War II era stuff that we were told for years was a conspiracy. Because it does function, it can happen, and small groups or even large groups can keep secrets from populations and use that to manipulate them. To say it's mathematically unlikely is such a weasel as to call into question the motivation, which is very clear here. The motivation is that he wants to sell you end of life cancer drug and get that sweet
Or
sweet.
get paid by commission by
Yeah,
someone else who does.
there's a couple of articles here. There's one here from Climate Resistance, which is kind of
Climate resistance.
um, a takedown of the David Robert Grimes. Uh, I don't know who Lewinsky is. Go forth and the bad sex question. This is it. Kind of goes into some of the stuff that we've talked about, but there's a decent kind of conclusion. A paragraph here I went to read, but I can't remember which one it is. Give me a second here. Now, it basically talks about the stuff that we've talked about, the mathematical issues, the methodological issues, the ideological issues. There was some negative response to this at the time, but it largely came from places like, Climate Resistance, which is like a blog almost. And there was an article in Spiked Online. But this is from actually before the article came out. And it's talking about this very effect, which is the pathologizing of climate skepticism. So I thought there was more in that climate change one, but it's a bit of an old blog. Yeah, the shoddy science of skeptic bashing log 12 attempts to turn criticism into a pathological illness, which is very much what we talk about when we talk about the therapeutic state stuff. A lot of this, you have to be mentally ill to disbelieve these numbers. You're a science denier. A lot of it is signaling low status and low intelligence, but this article is basically talking about the fact that it's shown as basically a societal illness you not to believe in any of these. This is in 2013 though, and there's been precious few of these that talk about the pathologizing. Um, this is the Ledendowski study. Sorry, this is quite a famous study again. That I think Mr. Grimes was inspired by. A recent study by Stephen Lewandowski, a psychologist at the University of Western Australia, aimed to identify climate change skeptics' tendency towards conspiracy theories. According to Lewandowski's paper published in Psychology Science, links were placed on climate blogs inviting readers to take part in a survey that measured each respondent's political orientation, attitude to climate change science, and adherence to popular conspiracy theories such as those about the deaths of JFK, Martin Luther King, and Diana. The 9/11 attacks, aliens in Roswell, and the 1969 moon landing, hence the title of the paper, NASA faked the moon landing, therefore climate science is a hoax, an anatomy of a motivated rejection of science. I think this is an even more nakedly political argument.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna pretend I haven't seen a sidebar article from Spike here about how misogyny is at the heart of the trans movement.
Yeah, no, Spiked completely went off. We don't talk about Spiked anymore. They've completely folded themselves into the Tory industrial complex, and are
Ugh.
very much going the J.K. Rowling is our biggest right wing ally route. Um, but here is basically the NASA fake the moon landings, therefore climate science is the hoax, anatomy of motivated rejection of science. Which the title in of itself is just like seething.
Mm,
You can just see him. He's like the Wojak with a mask on.
yeah.
But that is the pathologizing that goes on here. That basically the study don't start with the researchers' haste to give this work a compelling name. The paper, now known as Log 12, was published on Ledendowski's website last July. Will have its publication in the journal Psychology Science in March. In spite of not yet having been published, a pre-press version drew a great deal of attention across the climate debate. For environmentalists, it was proof that their counterparts were textbook nutjobs. For skeptics, it was a poorly conceived and improperly executed smear job with only a superficial, I can't speak, art of academic credibility. I think the search for academic credibility here is the
Yeah,
mistake.
Jim Hansen has never presented a graph to people that was upside down. He
Yeah.
never did that. Totally. No, the hockey stick was never the wrong way round. He
The
promises.
the issue here is framing it as a scientific debate when it is not. It is an exercise of power and a
Yes.
therapeutic exercise. I was disappointed when I read this, when I saw the title here of the pathologizing and the illness stuff, but they never really go all hog. They,
What's the sort of conclusion they come to here? Oh my god, this is so long.
it's far too long and it's very.
Yeah, right. The consequence of this should be alarming to everyone who takes an interest in the climate and other scientific debates, no matter what their view on climate change. Why? You've just gone through a whole. You've just gone through a conspiracy
Yeah,
on how they're trying to
it
prove the
doesn't
climate.
matter.
Yeah. So why would you then be like, oh well, no matter what the view is? Surely, well, after all the evidence you've seen, you would believe that there is no evidence to
Well,
it. Otherwise, they
this
wouldn't
is
have
Ben
to cover
Pyle
their
from Climate
arses.
Resistance. He tries to do the whole debunk thing.
Lewandowski shows that academic institutions do not produce dialogue that has any more merit than the petty exchanges, flame wars that the internet is famous for. Dressing political arguments up in scientific terminology risks the value of science being lost to society, its potential squandered for an edge in a political fight.
It's such a naive appeal because it
Neutrality.
it misses the point that that's always what these journals and what the science has been used for in a modern context.
After all, if Lewandowski's work is representative of the quality of scientific research in general and the standards of the academy expects of academics, what does that say about climate science and the quality of the scientific consensus on climate change? The scientific argument about the link between anthropogenic CO2 and climate change is only as good as Lewandowski's claim. The rejection of climate science is strongly associated with the endorsement of a laissez-faire view of unregulated free markets. Then perhaps climate skeptics should be taken more seriously.
I don't know. Trying to see if he has an early life section. Lewandowski could go either way. I'm not sure about that one. We'll call it sus for now, shall we?
I'll take a deeper look.
But again, this is this was written before the empiricide on the viability of conspiratorial beliefs. But really, what he's talking about here is a very naked attack on skepticism, on critical thought, on noticing the fact that a lot of the climate change debate is bunk. It falls down on its own face. There is a huge amount of politicization. The whole thing just does not function as a scientific exercise. It's not meant to. It is a political and power exercise, and that is what all I think of these responses miss. What there also is here is I found something called the Journal of Scientific Practice and Integrity, but it seems to be more of a blog than a journal. But it does at least seem to have a dissident viewpoint. I just like them just going to town on David Robert Grimes here. Experts blast David Robert Grimes for his failure to understand science and love for self-citation. We saw his self-citation there in The Guardian earlier. It's very circular referencing. I make graph, therefore graph go up. But before we do that, I wanted to get my graph out here. I've done some research myself, and I found out that as the amount of thing that harms you and not me goes up, things do get more gooder. As you can see, the good line goes up.
Oh, we missed.
And the bad line goes down.
Professor Stefan. Oh no, sorry, it's 16th of February. We can still make it. He's doing an online seminar on demagoguery, technology, and cognition, addressing threats to democracy.
It's always them as political functionaries. But no. I'm selling my paper here. For just 90 Canadian dollars, you can have access to my study, which says that as things I like happen, world get more gooder. I'm a fully paid up member of the Line Go Up Institute.
Yeah, well, why is it that all these people who are, God, he's still quote tweeting Occupy Democrats in the year 20? Jesus. No, but why is it that all of these people who seem to write these articles on science and conspiracy theories, why is it they all agree with the same political consensus? Why are they all so about democracy, pluralism, and liberalism? Strange that.
It is very odd, isn't it? That all of this, the belief in non-regime opinions is quantified as an illness, and both a literal and social ill, and is then treated by the power center.
Yeah.
But yes, I just wanted to get my my graph out there.
Look at this graph.
Well, this is all I see when someone's like, "You have to eat the bugs, or else the world."
Yeah. I've got a study.
I can control the weather by eating bugs.
I mean, I could come up with some really good studies on the thermal capacity of gases and biological material, but then we get in trouble.
Oh, we're gonna get some Inception there. Sorry, I clicked on the stream. We're gonna have Streamception. Sorry, I'm clicking around futilely here. I'm flailing. Send help. No, this is when is scientific debunking really just a way to dismiss pesky scientists' findings, trouble corporate interest, but it is incestuous. For physicist David Robert Grimes, it seems quite often. Researchers with decades of experience in toxicology and epidemiology are crying foul and calling for retraction of a recent essay in JAMA Oncology, written by Grimes, in which the assistant professor of biomedical physics at Dublin City University ignored and dismissed much of the peer-reviewed literature and government findings that point to dangers from radio frequency radiation, scientific evidence that a telecom, IT, and power industries find uncomfortable. So basically the idea that if you live on the power lines, that'll give you fucking cancer because you're getting blasted.
But I mean, in the day and age where we've just had, nearly coming up on 3 years now of COVID-related nonsense.
Yeah.
Epidemiologists actually asked for a paper to be taken down.
Yes. That's how bad... This was in 2022. Grimes' paper was so bad in terms of, EM pollution, as it was, that people like his fellow epidemiologist cried foul.
So he made such a bad job at debunking the idea that 5G gives you COVID that people said, don't put that out because folk will believe it.
Yeah. Uh, in what has emerged as Grimes' preferred technique to belittle those he disagrees with, he also heaps scorn on contrary scientific evidence as fringe science, while exaggerating the importance of his own opinions on misconceptions and conspiracy theories. Such rhetoric has been all too common in recent years and comes from a small community of self-styled experts on conspiracy theories whose debunking just happens to favour corporate interests. In the past, Grimes also promoted the narrative favoured by Monsanto that argued against the scientific evidence of harm caused by pesticide glyphosate. I believe that's Roundup.
Glyphosate is really bad.
Yeah. So he's also a Monsanto shill.
Oh, eating weed killer is not bad for you. If we go further down here, though, in truth, David Robert Grimes did an advertisement for Vodafone in 2020 where he downplayed any ill health effects from 5G. But in a recent review of the scientific literature, researchers found no human experimental studies on 5G and urged research in this area. Yeah, they probably should for the same reasons you wouldn't want to stick your hand in a microwave.
Yeah. In a lengthy email, Chris Pointier ticked off several faults in Grimes' analysis. Most notably Pointier spent over 3 decades at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, the National Toxicology Program, where he led research and design programs on cancer-causing agents, such as the hazards of Agent Orange, good lord, and the dangers of EM radiation. So I thought he was. Chris Pointier is the Agent Orange guy.
Yeah. Well, no, it's also just funny that
he's a guy who was like, yeah, you know, that Agent Orange, it actually did give all those vets cancer. Sorry, federal government, that's going to cost you a couple billion.
No, it's just the fact that they're like, no, we need to do the fake study that says 5G is bad first before you can do the fake meta study on it. Any positive evidence is treated as coming from a failed experiment. Any positive epidemiological finding is recalled bias. Any flaws and negative studies are ignored, Portier says, and he loves to cite himself. Indeed, in 5 of his 36 citations for the essay, Grimes cites Grimes. On examination, none of these 5 references is scientific research that Grimes conducted. They're just another Grimes opinion. Very based. So where did you get the source for this? It's my own opinion. I wrote it here on this piece of paper. When not citing himself, Grimes loves to cite the International Commissions on Non-Iodizing Radiation Protection, ICNIRP.
And claim it is a public health body, which it isn't, in fact.
It's a small private non-profit with close ties to industry. For some years, it has been criticised for its close ties to very industries that rely on scientists finding little harm from radio frequency radiation, including telecom, IT, power companies, as well as the military. In 2008, the ethical board at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden, concluded that being a member of the INCNIRP
should be noticed as a conflict of interest. This is just great because it doesn't pull the punches. It basically just goes. I'm
really surprised someone wrote this in current year.
Yeah.
In his zeal to debunk published papers, Grimes also ignores actions taken by governments around the world to limit potential harm caused by cell phone radiation. That's almost a conspiracy theory that the governments don't tell us about doing that one, do they?
Yeah, no.
In a report released last summer on the evidence for carcinogenic and reproductive health hazards of 5G, the European Parliament noted people should be informed of the potential health risks, but also the opportunities for digital development, what infrastructural alternatives exist for 5G transmission, the safety measures taken by the EU and member states, and the correct use of mobile phones.
I'd like to move on from this, though. Basically, where's this? Despite Grimes' claims of no reputable evidence that glyphosate causes cancer, the evidence has long been clear. In 2015, the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans. Very cancer expert.
Yeah.
Much PhD.
No, I just like music and chat here. He's just got, as Grimes 2015 states, Grimes 2019 and Grimes 2020 are both correct in their analysis of Grimes' paper on conspiracies in brackets 2021.
Since that finding, a horde of respected scientists have begun documenting the assault on AIRC by apologists for the agrochemical industry such as Grimes. In the journal Environmental Health Perspective, dozens of scientists signed a statement that found criticisms of IARC's findings on glyphosate to be unfair and unconstructive. A group of toxicologists writing in the American Journal of Industrial Medicine added that the criticisms were part of a campaign by economic interests to undermine scientific work. Such interference does not bode well for the free flow of scientific information that informs and protects the public from risks of cancer. In critiquing Grimes, Merrick noted a particularly relevant passage where Grimes opined, for clinicians and scientists in cancer, it is important to understand the current evidence base. That applies to him, Melnick says. He's got an agenda. It's just absolutely. This commentary has been co-published by the Disinformation Chronicle and the Journal of Scientific Practice and Integrity. I'm not quite sure how trustworthy the source is, but they just do go in on him, and it is quite funny. And the people that they cite, one, are real, and two, are rather senior in their fields. So it's basically him getting kicked around like a football.
Yeah.
Because he's finally stuck his finger in the wrong beehive, and he's not. He's been doing pop science, where corporate interest meets essentially anti-farmer and agriculture chemical activism.
As long as there's like some positive propaganda on Reddit about all this stuff, then all is okay.
Well, the other part and where the thumbnail is from is I wanted to talk about like the final half hour of the stream. We don't really have time to do it in a huge amount of detail, but another upshot of the therapeutic state stuff is the fact that there is a huge amount of forbidden science. Before we move on to that, though, I'm going to take a look around here. Yeah, I just wanted to say that the whole thing, especially the Ars Technica, or whatever it was, article about that, basically the Reddit stuff it's what dumb people think smart people sound like, which I think is one of the better descriptions of it. It's also how Doctor Who's. I tell you what, should we bring in? I actually think we should bring in the quote here from After Liberalism, because I think it's a great preface. Because argumentum ad Hitlerum is basically what is done to a huge amount of inconvenient research material, especially in biology, where this article is called "Don't Even Go There." The National Institute of Health now blocks access to an important database if it thinks a research scientist may enter forbidden territory. A policy of deliberate ignorance has corrupted top scientific institutions in the West. It's been an open secret for years that prestigious journals will often reject submissions that offend privileged political orthodoxies, especially if they involve controversial aspects of human biology and behavior, no matter how scientifically sound the work might be. Basically, if you do any empirical study that shows that race is a factor in any outcome, you will have your career ended.
Yeah.
This has been well known for a very long time.
American geneticists now face an even more drastic form of censorship, exclusion from access to the data necessary to conduct analysis, let alone publish results. Case in point, the National Institutes of Health now withhold access to an important database if it thinks a scientist's research may wander into forbidden territory. The source at issue, the database of genotypes and phenotypes.
I've seen some phenotypes in my time.
It is an exceptional tool, combining genome scans of several million individuals with extensive data about health, education, occupation, and income. It is indispensable for research on how genes and environments combine to affect human traits. No other widely accessible American database comes close in terms of scientific utility. So, if you want to use this database of phenotypes, genotypes, DNA chains...
Yeah, you have to be a friend of the regime.
Well, not just you have to be a friend of the regime, but you have to then be... You have to engage with that material in a way that does not confirm any form of materialist race bias.
Yeah, you are disallowed from certain findings. Certain findings are simply unacceptable, no matter what the evidence.
What is NIH's justification? Studies of intelligence do not pose any greater threat to the dignity of their participants than research based on non-genetic factors. The customary safeguards in place, research activities such as genetically predicting an individual's academic performance need be no more stigmatizing than predicting academic performance based on an individual's family structure during childhood.
Well, one seems to predict the other, I would say, but none of the studies I am referring to include inquiries into race or sex differences. Apparently, NIH is clamping down on a broad range of attempts to explore the relationships between genetics and intelligence. So basically, if you think there is a genetic component in the abstract, even if they're not mentioning hot button in quotes issues like race and sex, you will have your application denied because you are not allowed to find evidence of genetic
Even
relationships and
if that's
intelligence.
only a consequence of the otherwise data collection you're doing for your study.
Yeah, purely socioeconomic factors. Why? Because no one's allowed to cite other things. We have another donation here though from JD for £5 saying it's tried to say that the vast number of conflicts of interest that squash research. Sorry, it's tried to say, but the vast number of conflicts of interest that squash research areas here and elsewhere in mind is mind bending. How overt and blatant it is. Yeah, the malpractice is just out
Well,
there in the open,
well,
but
how
it's not a
else would you
conspiracy.
get money to fund your scientific projects? It's not like scientists have like capital that they're expending on research that they're doing for their own good.
Well,
We're well past the sort of cult, religious, and investigative forms of science, so like the Rosicrucians.
well, as we talked about during our replication crisis stream, the amount of science in quotes being produced far outstrips the useful things being found.
Mm.
Therefore, you must, under a public kind of goods framework of science, you must justify your existence in another way in an overcrowded field. And that way is by being a propaganda machine for regime bias. That's just how it works. The cost of this census was profound. On a practical level, many of the original data generating studies were set up with the explicit goal of understanding risk factors for various diseases. Since intelligence and education are also risk factors for many of these diseases, denying research uses for these data stymies progress on the problems that the studies were funded to address. Scientific research should not have to justify itself on these programs anyway.
There's such a like
Yeah.
logical gymnastic maneuver that in studying the outcomes of race,
Yeah.
but and actually probably studies that would have otherwise started with the impetus to close whatever gap they believed was probably caused by discrimination, and say for example health outcomes. You then can't do the study to find the health outcomes because to go look for differences might require you to conclude that at least in some part it's down to something that isn't, as you say, purely environmental, social, or economic. It might be, I don't know, genetics.
God, yeah, he's talking about Craig Vint, which is a whole other rabbit hole here. Basically, a lot of the NIH's alumni are horrendous, transhumanist
That's
bugmen.
why they were all working with Jeffrey Epstein on Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, yeah,
But
basically,
that's a very different
that's a very
story.
different story. Yes, we'll have to talk about that. Again, what disappoints me about this is it's essentially haggling with the boxcar door.
Mm.
And it's saying, well, we're not even going to study race and sex, and you're still denying. Why are you doing that? It's because, like, I'm sorry, but your field is fake and has been fake ever since the civil rights era and even before. Nothing is learned in these fields, and you are essentially being put down what are like on rails pathways to conclusions that confirm what the power center wants to say. And that's not a conclusion that anyone who's a research scientist would ever come to, because it would make their entire life meaningless.
Just the whole notion here is once again wrong, though. That, you know, this is all predicated on the view that one, man is purely a product of his environment.
Yeah.
Two, you can understand that environment and the outcomes man has within it purely from mathematics. And at three, you can then use that mathematics to imply better adaptation to the environment or influencing the environment in a way that makes the outcomes different.
Here's the quote. We'll bring in the theory here. This is from page 4 of the foreword. Is it the foreword?
I think this is from the first chapter.
Yes, this is from the first chapter of After Liberalism, and it is amazing because it refers to a lot of the stuff we'll be talking about in the next segment.
Yeah, such argumenta ad Hitlerum have characterized the charge of anti-liberalism brandished by liberal advocates since the 40s. Invariably, this line of attack relies on some form of the slippery slope by which any serious assault on liberal social planning is condemned as a plunge into the rightist past. This tactic of debate, for example, was favoured by prominent liberal intellectuals responding to the bell curve, a study of the genetic sources of intelligence on the October 31st, 1994 issue of the New Republic. The bell curve's author, Charles Murray, and the late Richard Herrnstein, argued in excruciating detail that there are intractable differences in IQ that cannot be accounted for entirely by environment. They suggest that social policies intended to remove these cognitive disparities will fail in the end, and that the American society in the future will likely organize itself hierarchically and multiculturally along the lines of intelligence. Not so sure about that. Whatever the merits of these debatable positions or propositions, nowhere do Herrnstein and Murray call for the eugenic planning that their liberal respondents ascribe to them. One critic, Michael Lind, also well-known commentator these days.
Michael Lind was one of the people involved in tearing down Samuel Francis.
But you're thinking more of Dinesh D'Souza.
No. Michael Lind was involved in it too. No,
Mm.
Michael Lind was one of the main people. He's one of the people D'Souza quotes.
Ah,
Michael Lind is the person who said, Sam Francis said that Mexicans aren't our people because they're not of our race, and we
based
can't
Sam
just
Francis.
we can't just be replaced by Mexicans who vote Republican. And Michael Lind was saying, "Oh, aren't all these Mexicans voting? Isn't that great?" And it's just
Yeah.
like they're Mexicans. Anyway,
Michael Lind traces their research to a brave new right that favours Nazi eugenic policies. Another respondent, New Republic senior editor John Judas, offers the opinion that the unwillingness to bring up hereditary causes of intelligence is not a taboo against unflinching scientific inquiry, but against pseudoscientific racism. Of all the world's taboos, it is the most deserving of retention.
the idea that intelligent parents have intelligent children is taboo. Like basically that's all the bell curve is saying. The bell curve is actually quite milk toast when you read it.
It does have some
It has an
reference to racial
It does
outcomes and IQ.
Oh, it does, but that's what are racial groups if not extrapolated out family groups? That's the whole thing. It's just like, look, what?
I don't know. Depends if you believe it all comes from the one tree or not.
Well, extrapolate out family groups, they can be different. Anyway, that's a different discussion. This is a great passage basically about the liberal orthodoxy, which makes certain lines of inquiry completely impossible, not because of their scientific validity, but because of their non-adherence to liberal social policy. The next one we've got here is from The Guardian, talking about
There's
UCL.
no way they held a conference secretly. Conspiracy theories can't happen.
Yeah. UCL to investigate eugenics conference secretly held on campus.
Oh, it was Toby Young.
Ooh. Yeah, Toby Young, he wanted to make Tommy Robinson sign a code of conduct before he would defend him. Toby Young is a sub-Brexit party milquetoast think tank bootlicker, and he is not someone you can rely on to defend you, because he will actually call you a Nazi and tell you to get lost. But yeah, Toby Young was prominent attendee of last year's conference run by an honorary senior lecturer at the university. But this is more of a reference that they call it eugenics conference. It's the same alarmism we see talked about in After Liberalism. It's the London Conference on Intelligence.
It was said to have been run secretly for at least 3 years by James Thompson, an honorary senior lecturer at the university, including contributions from a researcher who has previously advocated child rape.
I'm sure that's true.
What was it, John Maynard Keynes? Did he resurrect him for this?
One prominent attendee at the conference in May last year was Toby Young, the head of the government-backed New Schools Network, who ran into controversy over efforts to appoint him as a university regulator.
Toby Young was working on a government-backed program for schools where he now spends several years, or he's now arguing against the programs that are in schools. I mean, it was there in 2018. Did he not see that they were woke then?
Like I said, he's an insider, and he's somebody who comes from inside the system. I don't trust Toby. I don't like him. Mostly because of stuff like this. But anyway, Young has also resigned from his post on the Fulbright Commission, which oversees student scholarships programs between British and US universities. He's the safe distance.
UCL said it had no knowledge of the conference, an invitation-only circle of 24 attendees, which could have led to a breach of the government's prevent regulations on campus extremism.
Good. They're really throwing the kitchen sink at it here. Young, in a speech to a conference in Canada held in the International Society of Intelligence, research last year. God, there's a spelling error in this still. There's a missing space there.
Yeah.
Described the extreme measures that Thompson employed to keep the conference a secret. Attendees were only told the venue at last minute. An anonymous antechamber at the end of the long corridor called Lecture Room 22 and asked not to share this information with anyone else. So these are the conditions that...
Oh, no, but this is about to get better here.
Yeah.
Because it was never a secret meeting. One of the attendees, on discovering I was a journalist, pleaded with me not to write about the fact that he was there. He did not want his colleagues to find out. Wasn't he very secret, was it?
No. But these precautions were not unreasonable considering the reaction that any any references to between group differences and IQ generally provoke. This is the measure that you have to become like a secret organization to talk about the fact that genetics might affect your intelligence.
They're really daubing on that Emil Kierkegaard guy who's written supportively about paedophiles being allowed to have sex with a sleeping child. Since when? He gets touted as some based scientist these days. He better not have been writing about that.
I don't know. They also say this stuff about Mr. Depends on the child, but so you misspeak once, or you answer a question facetiously in any context, and this is what happens.
Yeah.
This is why you don't deal with journalists. On finding out he was a journalist, what they should have done is bungled him out the back and told him that if he ever heard from him again, he wouldn't write. But anyway, these are the conditions that certain lines of scientific inquiry, evolutionary psychology, and any research into human intelligence that relates to genetics has to exist under. There's a follow-up article that throws the kitchen sink at it, which is where part of the thumbnail comes from, called The Unwelcome Revival of Race Science. Its defenders claim to be standing up for uncomfortable truths, but race science is still as bogus as ever, by Gavin Evans, who I don't know who the... But I was stunned to find that Charles Murray is here in this article.
And so Stefan Molyneux.
Yeah. Stefan Molyneux, who actually did some pretty good stuff during this era, I will say. Another of Molyneux's recent guests was political scientist Charles Murray, who co-authored The Bell Curve. Buck argued that poor people, and particularly poor black people, were inherently less intelligent than white or Asian people. When it was first published in 1994, it became a New York Times bestseller, but over the next few years, it was picked to pieces in academic circles.
Debunked.
That's why they won't let these people have access to the database anymore, because they might do some more...
oh God, I tell you what, of all the writing errors that The Guardian has committed, calling Sam Harris a popular non-fiction author might be one of the most egregious.
As a frequent target of protests and college campuses, Murray has become a figurehead for conservatives who want to portray progressives as unthinking hypocrites who have abandoned the principles of open discourse that underwrite a liberal society. Can you imagine if the roles were, again, boxcar haggling? And this logic has prompted some mainstream cultural figures to embrace Murray as an icon of scientific debate, or at least an emblem of their own openness to possibilities that truth can, at times, be uncomfortable. Last April, Murray appeared on the podcast of the blah, 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 Sam Harris. Murray used the platform to claim his liberal academics lied without any apparent shadow of guilt, because I guess in their own minds they thought they were doing the Lord's work.
I take it that's the thumbnail image there. I mean, it's no surprise someone who is an utter Euro mutt would be holding a sign that says "No eugenics."
What area of Portugal and Haiti are your parents from? But it's scientific racist. What is this? 88-year-old Ulster-based evolutionary psychologist Richard Lynn. Sounds pretty based. Scientific racist. Excuse me, we are spiritual and esoteric racists here. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on. But basically, at the end,
see, there is something that I always find hilarious. Wait, let's just one of the ones there. These political goals have become ever more explicit. When interviewing Nicholas Wade, Stefan Molyneux argued that different social outcomes are the result of different innate IQ among the races. As he put it, high IQ Ashkenazi Jews and low IQ black people. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, Stefan. But so many of these people are evolutionary biologists, evolutionary anthropologists. They are out and out materialists. they believe in an explanation for man's existence on this planet that starts with, amoebas and ends up with us, and there is no grander meaning or scope or purpose to us other than that. And yet these people still don't make the pale.
Well, as we talked about to lead in here in last week's stream, that the Lancet will not allow you to even discuss in a study the differences in biology resulting from differences in outcome, in quotes, resulting from differences in biology in a very broad sense.
Well, they were even willing to suggest that notifying differences in biology from a first point was
wrong,
was a misstep.
Yeah. But it's just the self-righteousness here. When you look at this, you look at those statements, you look at the fact that talking about biological differences is basically banned when it comes to intelligence, social outcomes, anything like that. Race science isn't going away anytime soon. Its claims can only be countered by slow, deliberate work of science and education. They need to be not only because of their potentially horrible human consequences, but because they are factually wrong. Probably is not, as the right would have it, that these ideas are under threat of censorship or stigmatization because they are politically inconvenient. Race science is bad science, or rather, it's not science at all. It's a great kind of exception here. Here we see the sovereign in action. Anything that is inconvenient is not science. It is intolerant. It is illiberal. They're not arguing on its merits here. It's just stated, this is wrong, this has been debunked,
well, yeah,
this is wrong.
It was to go right back to the start. Oh, well, I looked at some graphs and spoke to a man who said he was a climate scientist, and now I believe you should too.
It's evangelism. It's, these are bad men, these are bad beliefs. It's kind of funny here that there was a slight counter article kind of the year before called "The Insidious Influence of the SPLC," basically talking about the fact that the SPLC has gone too mask off and has actually been sued for defamation and is starting to let the side down. It's containment purely, but I just thought it was funny that there was the same event is actually posted by the Wall Street Journal as a riot.
Yeah,
and God, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's kind of funny that the event itself is put in very different lights by even someone as milquetoast as the Wall Street Journal. Funny. There's one of the most, I guess, famous people in our circles who goes into this is Brain Go Dead.
Dutton.
Yeah, Edward Dutton. Sorry. When I say Ed Wood. We were talking about this X-Files episode earlier. Yeah, but Edward Dutton is one of the most famous kind of distant philosophers / intellectual people that we have. He's a bit of an eccentric. I've met him a couple of times, but he's very convincing. He's very good. He's very up on these topics. He's coined some of the better stuff about dysgenics that people talk about. A lot of people misuse it, I think. But his some of the bioenergy stuff is fascinating. You've slightly overapplied. The spiteful mutant stuff is definitely true, but
people never understand the other reason for it.
Yeah,
which is that once you have this class of hateful, spiteful mutants as your patrons, you can then use them as your scapegoats as and when convenient.
This is a terrible, almost photoshopped called the Gordy, but it's actually one of the top results if you search.
I presume is this some sort of internal Aberdeen University paper?
Yes, it is. It's one of the first results when you search for Edward Dutton and human intelligence. So this has been artificially boosted to the top of Google as a debunk. But basically, they're Aberdeen alumnus with neo-Nazi links leading the charge for racist pseudoscience in academia online. It's, making sense of race, meeting Jesus at university. He just talks about who Dutton is and basically tries to jacket him as actually, argumentation.
Richard B. Spencer, Greg Johnson, Scansiform, Traditional Britain Group, Patriotic Alternative, London Conference on Intelligence, Katie Hopkins, Kevin MacDonald. They've basically thrown everything into that second to last paragraph there.
It's just great that they're talking about the fact that they've appeared in actual journals, and they're just getting upset that facts they don't like are in. Not in a. Oh, can you imagine if the roles are reversed? It's just the fact that this stuff is completely shut out of like regime circles. That it's not a scientific argument, and treating it like one, again, haggling with the boxcar door. It is a therapeutic environment in which you will be medicated away, and your beliefs will be medicated away and
Or
pathologized away.
necessarily censored as and when required.
Well, there's just a couple of other things I wanted to go through here as a kind of a lead in to a later stream. We're not going to do it next week because we've got our stream with a guest next week.
We might have another one coming up this week.
Okay.
I remember we put the poll out on Telegram, and a lot of people seem interested in us doing a stream on the Hope Not Hate report when it comes out.
We'll see when that comes out then, because we'll do that like on the day it comes out. We'll rush. Well, no, not rush it. But...
We'll quickly do like a quick hour on it.
Yeah. I really want to make sure that we do, because that's Hope Not Hate, as we talked about last year, is not a leftist publication anymore. Not that it ever really was.
It is regime aligned, not ideologically.
Yeah,
aligned.
it is regime aligned. It's a great indicator of where the regime is going and where they want things to go. This is from the Independent Institute. I'm not sure who they are, but it does cite a study that other people cite. I just thought this website has some better formatting.
I just like that headline.
Yeah. Belief in freedom is bad for you. So is distrust of government, according to a study in the American Journal of Medicine. One possibility relates to a distrust of government or belief in freedom that contributes to both vaccination preferences and increased traffic risks. The drunk driver is the most oppressed demographic in America.
Yes, I drink, therefore I drive.
As Sir Burnaby Terry Jones proclaimed in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, who is this who is so wise in the ways of science? Behold the authors of COVID vaccine hesitancy and risk of traffic crash, published by the American Journal of Medicine, but authored by a trio in Canada.
Well, there was a number of these papers. I remember seeing headlines at one point, sort of mid 2021, that those who express vaccine hesitancy are more likely to show symptoms of schizophrenia or psychotypical disorders or this, that, and the next thing. I think that's just another further derivation of it, in that if you don't choose the vaccine, you're not as risk adverse as people who otherwise would choose to take the vaccine, and you are therefore more likely predicted as a dangerous driver.
Well, this is just some old guy from American Greatness, which is very boomer-con. It's very federalist, and he just ruminates about it. But basically, I just wanted the headline. Because the rest of it is just boomer being, freedom, America, tyranny, again, boxcar haggling. But it was written by like three, Raildamir Wang and Turachilvahum. So an Indian, a Chink, and a Jew, basically. Make it clear they don't believe in freedom, blah, blah, blah. But basically, they're just trying to say, if you didn't take the vaccine, you're gonna die in a car. You're stupid and will die in car crash. Take shot. You stupid. It's again a lot of the stuff being said here.
Runaway slaves certainly believed in freedom. Otherwise, they would have stayed on the plantation. What, like the majority of them?
Anyway, that was a funny headline. Get through these. We'll probably do something. I have an archive of this somewhere. Anyway, and this is why you open archives and not people. Oh, I don't. Okay. Well, anyway, this is a TV show, I believe on ITV, called Henry from the School That Tried to End Racism. I was worried I'd be called racist. Helen Chandler Wild discovers the legacy of being part of a fascinating school racism experiment. We'll do this at some point, but basically what happened was, I don't want to play the clips from it because we'll get copyright struck. Maybe we'll do it on like an Odyssey stream at some point or something. This is going to annoy the piss out of me, so I'm going to make sure I do have an archive of this, just so I don't have to look at I could always remove those with like Ghostry with the ad block, but I'm just going to quickly make sure that's actually archived. But there were basically racial struggle sessions in Britain that were televised. This was turned into a TV program.
It was basically Question Time, but for kids.
No, it was that clip where like stand forward if this has ever happened to you.
No, but not in the way that like
Yeah.
especially over time, question time became a thing of like they would have the Marcusian nurse would come on and she would ask a question from the back of the crowd and
Yeah.
don't you believe it's wrong to think this way about immigrants? And then one
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
MPs would be like, well, of course. And then everyone.
Well, it's the raw, like, all the critical race theory stuff
Mm.
that totally isn't happening in American classrooms.
Yeah.
Well, it's happening in British classrooms as well, but it's the school that tried to end racism, a powerful lesson in white privilege. The gripping documentary follows the first UK trial of a US program aimed at educating pupils on unconscious racial bias.
Mm.
I can't wait for the lawsuits on this, like MK Ultra.
Oh, yeah, but it's a gripping documentary, don't you know?
Yeah. Anyway, um,
And then one to lead us into
a future stream at some point.
Yeah.
But talking about the use of conspiracy, the 77th Brigade being the idea that the government has a military outfit that is staffed and its purpose is purely to counter narratives on the internet from the British public.
specifically on the subject of public health.
And so much of public health or just compliance in general, that the UK military would go on social media and berate you that your opinion is not only wrong but dangerous, would be seen as if you asked an MP if the British military was involved in propagandizing the British population about certain subjects, they would deny it. And yet there is in fact, they are very proud of the evidence of what happened. We'll see that the full report on this is a bit of a limited hangout. We'll be going over some of the flaws, and I believe Ellingpaul made the same point you did. It made the same point you did about the fact that they are essentially haggling about what is acceptable use of military propaganda on the UK
Yes,
population.
I'm gonna possibly stick a wee thing on the Substack this week as well about this. I might write that up.
But yeah,
and just post it
this is from the lockdown era. This is from April 2020. But Defence Chief says 77th Brigade is countering COVID misinformation. The UK's Chief of the Defence Staff, General Sir Nick Card, has revealed the secretive 77th Brigade of the British Army is involved in countering coronavirus misinformation online. Being its day's daily briefing, Carter said the unit, which was set up in 2015, yeah, sure it was, to specialise non-lethal forms of psychological warfare and uses the likes of Facebook and Twitter to fight in the information age and tackling false information about the pandemic on the web. The brigade is 2,000 people strong as the headquarters in Newbury, Berkshire, where troops are expected to deliver means of shaping behaviour through the use of dynamic narratives. It's very much implied
means of shaping behaviour through the use of dynamic narrative.
Yeah.
Lying to people to make them believe something they otherwise didn't.
Yes, that's what it is. We don't need conspiracies, really. They all do happen out in the open, but the big trick is when you as a citizen mention them, when you try to hold, naively whoever you think you can hold to account with this evidence, you will be laughed at. And you will be drummed out of whatever position you're in for speaking of things that they admit to publicly. But I think that's kind of the last upshot I want to talk to of the therapeutic state of the British military, quite literally being used as a therapeutic on the British population. In fact, I believe this is time for the glow watch. Because this is very it glows. Yeah, it glows so bright. We do get to the inaugural use in anger.
Oh, Fed boy, why does your nose so bright?
I also forgot to use the this during the race streams, but it's too easy. It's far too easy during those. I want to use that sparingly. It is a bit of a cliche one, but we are coming towards the end here. I guess we'll do some last chilling. We do like to chill at the end. Do subscribe if not subscribed already. Like, comment, all that normal cringy YouTubey horrible stuff.
Check out the Substack.
Yeah,
Follow
Substack,
us on Telegram if you don't already.
Links below. All our sources will be in the pinned comment. I'll put the pinned comment out basically when this finishes. I also make a community post as well. We tend to post them also on our Telegram. So all the sources, we like to make sure that you can do all your independent reading. You might pick up things that we've missed. I've had readers message me about bits that I've missed or bits that we've left out that we didn't have time for. So we do. Great handoff this evening. Aaron with Paul Gottfried. Okay.
Yeah, Paul Gottfried's doing the rounds. He was on Patrick Casey's show the other week as well.
Oh, we had a decent private kind of lecture / Q&A with him. It was pretty good. Although I don't know, he was worryingly unbased in certain aspects, but he is like in his 80s.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it'd be great if you got a drink in him.
Oh yeah. I think he didn't know what kind of audience he was talking to as well. But thank you guys for watching. Like I said, do check out the Substack, antipolitics.substack.com, because we will have basically weekly content for the foreseeable future. I think
possibly even more.
even more. Yes. So thank you guys, and
if we don't see you on Monday, we'll see you at some point during the week.
Yes,
Keep
we will.
peeled for the cope, not hate.
Keep watching the sky.
Question everything.
There we go. You got that in. No, that was